So today we are going to talk about website itself. We need to have a background understanding of what a website is, how it works, the entire anatomy of a website. So when we say website, we explained how internet works the other day, that's yesterday. And we said internet is network of networks, like millions of computers connecting themselves together, connecting within themselves. So now, where does website comes in to play now? So for us to be able to communicate, for me to be able to serve a particular information to whoever is looking for it, I need to put it in a presentable format. Just like if you want to type a letter, I want to believe everyone can hear me. Is my sound okay?
Yes, please. You're audible enough.
Okay.
Yeah, you're audible enough. Please go on floor.
All right. So, if you want to type a letter and send to someone, you now figure out that, okay, the best suitable platform and software will be for you to use Microsoft Word. Now, the same thing applies. If for you to be able to serve an information across the network to someone millions of miles away or thousands of miles away, it has to be in a format that the person at the other end can be able to receive, view it, and interact with it. That's where the idea of website comes in. So now, websites are made up of web pages, which will break it down when we look at HTML. Now, the basic engine language that powers website is called HTML. So I want you to see website as, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Excel spreadsheet. So now Excel spreadsheet has different sheets inside a workbook. You know, an Excel file is called a workbook. Now, inside a workbook as a file, there are sheets. You will see sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, and you can work with all of those and they become one file known as workbook. The same thing with website. Now, these are web pages that are interconnected within themselves. So you have page 1, page 2, page 3 to the number of pages, and you now link them up together within themselves and you have a website. And now, so if we create a page and link them up to become a website, that page, how do we create that page to start with? Like I said, if I want to type a letter, I'll use Microsoft Word. If I want to create a web page, I'll use what the language called HTML. Now, HTML means hypertext. Let's do a bit of let's introduce HTML. HTML means hypertext markup language. So we'll try as much as possible to break this whole thing down, because the whole idea is for you to understand it from the basics to where we start writing the code. So now, what does hypertext mean? Okay, so one of the things I intend doing is I'll be throwing questions to you. Now, some of the questions I'll be throwing to you, you might know the answer, you might not know the answer. We are all here to learn. So even if you don't know the answer and I throw a question to you, don't be surprised. Oh, why is he throwing a question to us? But if you know the answer, or if you have anything in your mind relating to that and you feel could be the correct thing, you can always say it. You might be correct. And if you're wrong, we'll correct you and it will stick. So, when we say hypertext, who can tell us what hypertext means? I mean, it could just be a pure English, just by way of either English or by way of technical language. What do you understand by hypertext? Any idea? Okay, I want to believe no idea. So let's look at hypertext. Because you know HTML means hypertext markup language. So we'll take it one by one. The first is hypertext. We have normal text and we have hypertext. So what makes a text hyper? What makes a text hyper is its ability to be linked to some other location, some other text, makes it hypertext. So if I write something like click here, it's a regular text as it is. But if I make this click here to in a way that if you click on it, it takes you somewhere, that automatically makes this click here a hypertext. I don't know if it's clear. So the next thing on HTML, remember we have H, we have T, we have M, we have L. So we said H is hypertext. No, HT is hypertext, and then M is markup, and then language. So our concentration is going to be hypertext and markup. Now, what is markup? If you're familiar with publishing, you understand the idea of markup. Markup means maybe I'm writing series of writing. Let's say he is a boy. Now, this irregular writing. Let's say this is a boy. Someone wants, maybe an editor wants to review this. He is a boy, and there's a particular things that editor wants to place emphasis on. Let's say the editor wants to place emphasis on boy. So what the editor could possibly do is either underline boy or make boy bold. So the idea of underlining boy or making it bold is a markup. Now it derived from those years of normal publishing, where you highlight stuff to make it bold or underline and all of those. So that's how we have hypertext markup language. Now, hypertext markup language, HTML, is a language. But again, a lot of people get confused if it's a programming language or if it's not a programming language. Okay, so HTML as a language is not a programming language, but rather it's a scripting language. So, because one of the characteristics of programming language is it has to be ability for it to be compiled, interpreted, and all of those. So, but HTML is not a programming language. But then the idea of programming starts from HTML. I wouldn't say all, but most of the idea of programming, most people that are in programming now probably started from HTML, because it gives you the idea, it gives you the sense of writing computer programs, writing programs for computer. Because from HTML you go upward and then you start digging into the core programming languages. So that's HTML. We say it's a markup language used to build web pages. So like I said, it starts with web pages, and then we put all the pages together to form a website. So let's proceed. So we've talked about markup language, we've talked about hypertext. So let's explain what an element is. At this point, I would want us to do a bit of practical. So I would want us to divide our screen into two. One side will be open the VS Code on one side, and then the Zoom call can be on one side. I don't know if that is possible. If it's possible, I would want us to do it. If it's not possible, then you can follow through. I'll give a break where we do practical and you can follow it well. So now we are moving into HTML squarely now. Why? Because HTML is the language that we use to build the basic language used in building websites. Just like you have Microsoft Word as the basic application used for typesetting, HTML is a basic language used for website design and development. So every other language comes in to complement HTML, because if you want to build a standard website, you're not just looking at only HTML. Okay, so there's a part that I want us to come back on our slide and look at: the website version and the code version of a website. So the beautiful website that you see when you go on Google or when you visit any website, there's a code version that produces that website. And part of what we are going to be doing will be writing the codes that gives a beautiful output of a website. And then while we're talking about website anatomy, we look at three key things. We said HTML is a basic language that you use in developing a website. Now, but HTML alone, yes, can still do it, but it might not be able to add the spices that we all need. That's why we bring in other stuff. We bring in CSS, we bring in JavaScript. CSS means cascaded style sheet. So with these pictures, I want to explain how the three of them work. Let's say you're building a house and HTML becomes you putting the blocks together to form a house. At that point, it's just a skeletal house. How do they call it in real estate? It's not finished. So now, for you to make the house look good, you need to start thinking of plastering, painting, sometimes screeding. So in terms of a house, the plastering, the screeding, the painting is what CSS comes to do on your website. Then the JavaScript. The JavaScript is just there for logic, and perhaps like the brain, the engine that powers some things that will be happening around there. For example, that you have to bring in electricity, you have to start putting things in the house and all of those. So JavaScript does that. So we look at HTML as a skeleton, CSS as a skin, and JavaScript as a brain. So with these three pictures, you can now understand what role each plays to get a website. Please, at any point you have a question, you can raise it and we'll look at it together. If you're confused at any point, we can pause and explain well. Okay? So, this is a learning session. Okay, so a typical example is what you're looking at here. We have the HTML, we have the CSS. Now, what it means is CSS adds beauty to HTML. HTML becomes the basic thing. CSS comes to add the beauty that it needs, it requires. Okay, so let's move. We're here. What is an HTML element? Now, everything that we are going to be writing on HTML is going to be made up of element, tags, and attributes. So those three things, we'll be hearing it very much. Elements, tags, and attributes. Okay, so what element? Element is the entire, for example, let's say we want to make a text bold. Possibly in HTML, we'll do something like B and then the text, and then we close it. So this is a tag, this is a tag, this is an open tag, this is a closing tag, and the entire thing is element. So when we say HTML element, we now mean from the tag to the content to the closing tag. Now, I'm taking time to bring in these things because when we start the practical things, you'll be hearing all of these things and we'll be looking at them one by one. Okay, so let's proceed. So as you can see on this slide, an HTML element defined by a start tag, content, and an end tag. Now, every element must have an open tag and closing tag. Sometimes you can call it a start and end tag. But then we still have elements that are self-closing elements, which we are going to talk about them as we go on. But first off, understand it from the open and closing tag. You open with a tag, you put the content, and you close the tag, and the entire thing becomes an element. Okay, so these are some of the common tags in HTML that we are going to be looking at. Okay, so to start with, I want us to go in practically to see how we can put up our first web page. But before then, I would want to go into a practical session, and I would want to revisit the how you installed VS Code. And I want, please, if you were able to install VS Code, can you raise your hand? Okay, so this VS Code, if everything works well, if you've done your installation well, what you'll see is going to look like what is showing on the screen now. But there are some tweaks we will still need to do to our VS Code so as to work well the way we want. So one of the things we are going to do will be to add extensions. So to add extensions, we'll go to extensions. One of the extensions we'll add is called Live Preview. So this serves as a server that will interpret your page, your HTML page, and gives the result that you want to see. Okay, so I want us to follow this and then install Live Preview. There are like 3 extensions that we will need to install. So we'll install Live Preview. Now, if you type Live Preview, before you finish the Live Preview, some of the things you'll see will be Live Server, Live Preview. You might want to install Live Server equally, because if you go into languages like PHP, you will need the live server. But we just want to be able to preview our page, whatever we are doing. So we are okay for now with live preview. I want to know when I can move. I want to be moving at each point that you are able to achieve what we are trying to do. If you have challenge, at this point is where we can look at your challenge and see how we can resolve it.
Sorry, sir. I'm trying to figure out how do we install the live preview.
Okay, so like I said, if you open your VS Code, on your left hand side, you'll see this icon, extensions. When you click on extensions, then you start typing on live preview. I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what I
Yes,
did
sir.
what I did was on the left hand side, I click on extensions and then I type live preview and it brings up live preview. The first result is the one I picked.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Are we good?
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we close that. So we want to create our first web page. Now, what's the idea of creating a website? Like I said, the idea of creating a website is having pages that links within themselves. So for you to start, the first thing you might want to do is to open a folder. So you can open a folder on your desktop. So for the purpose of this class, I'm going to open a folder on my desktop, rather on my documents. I'm going to call it 30 days bootcamp.
Well, sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes.
In the creation of the folder, I'm trying to think ahead of the class at this point. In the creation of the folder, does it have to be saved on the desktop, or it can as well be in document folder?
It can be anywhere. Is that clear?
Yes, it's all clear, sir.
Okay, so I've created a folder on my desktop. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll drag this folder onto the side here. I'll drag the folder to my VS Code workspace. It will prompt a question, do you want to add this to the workspace? And I'll say yes. Add folder to workspace. Yes. So you can see the 30 days bootcamp. Now this is the folder that is going to, that all my files are going to be inside this folder to make up my website. Okay, so what's the next thing? The next thing is for me to create my very first page. So to create my very first page, I'm going to right click and say new. Now in web development, before now, your first page, your initial page has to be named default. But a few things have changed. So your default page is going to be named as index, INDEX. Now index dot, in computer, every file must have an extension. So the question is, what's the extension for Microsoft Word file? Who knows?
Microsoft Word file, docs. .docs.
Okay, so Microsoft file has the extension either .doc or .docx. So just like every other files that will have extension, your image files have extension either .png, .jpg, .jpeg, etc., etc. So in website design, your basic file will have the name index, but the extension can vary depending on the language you're using. Now, since we are doing basic HTML, our extension is going to be .html, and then we have our page open and ready for us to start writing HTML codes that will become our web page, that will in turn make up our website. Are we clear? Okay, so
Yes, sir.
there's one extension I would love you to install. I'm still trying to think if it's the right decision for you to install now or not. It's called Prettier. Now, no, it's the right decision. So we will go back to extension and install the extension called Prettier. So if you type P-R-E-T, I think it's double T-I-E-R, Prettier.
That's good.
We want to start our first web page, and since our first structure is going to be HTML, and HTML is the basic language for website design, we are going to start with HTML tag. So now in HTML5, there's an introduction to what's called doc type. Now it's simply specifying the type of document. Okay, this document is an HTML document. So that's what the doc type does. And most times you can add language to doc type. For example, after our doc type, we can now add maybe English as a language, but then mostly you leave it at default. It will pick the default language. So then the next line will be our HTML opening tag, so which is HTML. Now if you can look at this, the writing didn't continue from this line and keep going. That is possible because we installed Prettier. Okay, so the next thing is, this is like our foundation on building our first page. So how do we work on this foundation? We've laid our foundation, so it's for us to now start building inside here. What are the components that you need on your web page? So for us to be able to look at, to understand this, let's go back to anatomy of a website. So now, what makes up a web page? So a web page has to have the header section, the navigational bar. So let's draw up our page. The first thing we need to look at is, this could be our logo, and then this could be our menu, which is home, about, contacts. And then after that, what next do we need? Maybe we need a sort of banner. This banner could be image banner. And then the next thing could be the intro section, introduction. Now, but these are things that we can see obviously on the page, But there are other hidden stuff called meta tags, like the title of the page and other elements, content, description of the page, search engine keywords, and all of those. Those are called meta tags. So, but we have to still put them into consideration when we are building a website. So let's go and start our website. I want to go to code view, and then we are here. So after our HTML, the next thing we are going to be looking at is the header section. That's our meta tag section. So for us to get our header section, we use the tag head, H-E-A-D. Now, this is how you open a tag. This is how you close a tag. Maybe I should write this out on the board for us to be able to follow before we come back to this other part. Okay, so someone sent a message on the group. I don't understand the message. If you're here, you can. I don't know if you're just sending it. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, can hear you, sir.
Okay, I hope I'm just talking. I'm not just talking to myself. All right. Okay, so we're going to get our pen and paper and draft out what's going to look like our basic structure of the website first, and then we proceed to code editor. So to start with, we are going to have, please mute your, please. Okay, so we are going to start writing. The first thing is we are going to do our doc type, our document type. Our document type is HTML. Of course, we all know that. So we can now say HTML and then close. Then the next thing will be our HTML tag, which we are going to do HTML and close. Now, pay attention to this part. This whole thing is the opening tag of HTML. At each point you open a tag, you have to close that tag. So we are going to close HTML tag, but then there are still things we are going to put things inside. Between the opening and the closing tag of HTML, we're going to put a lot of things inside. So two options that you have while you're developing on VS Code, you can open it and close and then come in between it and start working. But let's say I'm writing the way I'm writing now. I cannot just close it at this point because I'm writing with pen and paper. So what I can basically do is I open with the consciousness that I've opened, and then I'll be conscious enough to close it when I want to close it. So HTML, and then the next thing after HTML will be our header part. The header part is what contains the metadata, meta tags that we talked about, which we're still going to talk about it in details. So but for now, let's open the head tag, HEAD, and we open it. Now all these things are opened, we've not closed them. We have to make sure we close all of them at the right part. But then the cascading has to be in order. So it has to be HTML before head, before other stuff inside, and it keeps going down like that. So after head, the next thing we're going to look at is title. So now this title is where you write the title that you always see when you open a web page. So let's say our title is our first website. Now, since the title is within here, we can easily close title. So we now close the title tag. To close the title tag, you just write the same thing as you did on opening. The only difference is you put a / before the word. Okay, so now title, after title, there are other things we can put under head, but for now we're going to just have title, so it's safe to close head here. Now we've still not closed the HTML because we are still going to cascade a lot of things inside HTML, but we are done with head for now. Then the next part of, so what we are doing now is the website anatomy. The next part of a web page now becomes the body. So we are going to open body tag, body, but we cannot close it for now because we are still going to write a lot of things. So we have two tags on close, the HTML and the body. So what's going to be inside body? This is where we start designing everything we can do and all of those. So for example, for a start, let's say welcome to my page. So for us to write welcome to my page, we're going to look at possible tags that we can use. Now in HTML, there's a tag that you can use for header, and it's called header tag. And header tag is between H1 and H6. So how do you write header tag? You just open an H1 and you close. So for example, let's say welcome, and then we close H1. Now this H1 represents header, so it means the text is going to be bigger and bolder. Now header comes from H1 down to H6. The higher the number, the smaller the text. So H1 will be bigger, H2 will be a little bit smaller than H1, H3 will be smaller than H2, like that. So in this case, we just want to say welcome to our web page, and then close the body tag. So we're going to close body, and then let's use this opportunity to close our HTML. We close HTML. So this was just a demonstration. We can still go back to our VS Code and then start something. So on VS Code, just like we had on the other part, we have the head, and inside the head we can now put title, and inside title we can say welcome to my web page. Okay, so at this point we are done with head section, and then we go to body section and open the body tag. Now inside the body tag we can do a lot of things. For example, I talked about the header. Now header tag is represented by H and a number. Like I said, the number starts from 1 to 6. So H1 is the biggest. So if I say H1 and say welcome to my web page. So I want us to practice something. What we can practice would be, let's in the same vein, let's use H2 so that you see how they work. The same text, welcome to my web page. H3, welcome to my web page. So down till H6, but we might not follow through till H6. Okay, so let's see how this will preview. Can we see our screen? Can you all see my screen? We have the H1, the H2, the H3. If I continue down to H6, you see the difference. Like I said, the higher the number, the lower the text becomes. So this is the essence of the live preview that we installed. So whatever we are doing here, we'll be seeing it live as it's going to appear for others to see if we launch our website. H5, we now say welcome to my web page. H6, welcome to my web page. Now for your information, there's no H7. Okay, so now after this just for test purposes, I'm going to delete the whole of this to H1. So after my header, what's the next thing I would want on my website is the body. I want to write some series of writings. I want to welcome to my page. I want to introduce people to my page. So I have to use the paragraph tag. After the heading tag, I can now use the paragraph tag. So in this course, we are going to look at some of the tags that we can use to create the website. First off, we've talked about under the body, we've talked about the header tag, which we said from H1 to H6. And then we're going to look at the paragraph tag. So the paragraph tag is just open P and close P makes our paragraph tag. So we can now write inside this. So this is a test web page for the 30 days web development bootcamp. Now we can I won't want to write all of this, so I will copy and paste. I'll copy and paste. Let's see how it will wrap. So this is our text. One other thing we might want to do is we can bring in list. You know, if you're typing in Microsoft Word, you can have list, bullet points, and 1 to 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of those. So let's see how we can bring it in to our page. So we can equally open the paragraph tag again and say, here are the lists of tasks that we will be doing. And then we go down, and then so on in terms of list, just like you have in Microsoft Word, we have what is called the ordered list and an unordered list. So we have ordered lists, we have unordered lists. Now if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 let's say item, onions, pepper, Maggi, this is ordered list. because it comes in order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, but if you have bullet points, onions, bullet points, pepper, and so on and so forth, this is an unordered list. Okay, so now we know the difference. Let's go back to writing our code. So now we want to open the list tag, and before we open the list tag, we have to know what we want to do, the type of list we want. So we want to open an ordered list, so we open OL. OL represents ordered list, and then we close. Now there are sub elements, and don't confuse sub element with attributes. We'll talk about attributes after now. So, but there are sub elements. Now, after getting ordered list, we have to do the list items. For us to do the list items, we have to do LI, which represents list. So this way we list each of the items. For example, like onions, and when we want to do another one, we now do LI again, pepper, and then LI again, maybe Maggi, and so on. So, but then what did we say here? A list of tasks that we'll be doing. Okay, so let's put the task. What are the tasks that we'll be doing? We'll build a website. We'll host the website. And then we'll do other things. So this is how we get a list, and this is ordered list. But if we decide to change this to unordered list, we can do U and L. So we can change the O to U, and we have the bullet points. Okay, so this is how we get unordered list. Remember, in your head, the first letter ordered list OL, unordered list UL. Shikina. So what next are we looking at? So one key thing that will give you headway on website development is ability to look at other websites, how it's going, how it's being developed, and what can possibly change. So that's what we want to look at before we come back to this practical session. Now, this is just a skeletal thing. As we proceed, we are going to structure our website in a typical way a website will look like. Okay, so how many people have been able to get to where I am? By that I mean you are able to install VS Code, you are able to install the live preview, and you can preview your page like this. A typical structure of a website, and I want us to look at that together. So we are going to pull in, I'm going to return this, and I'll pull in Chrome. And on our Chrome, we are going to open ictmasterclass.com. So as a developer or as a website designer, one key thing that will always give you headway is your ability to use the developer tools. And on a website like this, you can right click and click on inspect. And when you click on inspect, it will bring up the sidebar. It will bring up the sidebar, and from this sidebar, let's expand it a bit so that we understand what we are doing. So from here, you can look at the skeletal part of that site. What code makes up the website? And you can temporarily change the codes. For example, these are the codes that makes up this site. Like we had HTML, we have the head section, we have the body section, and so on and so forth. So let's say I want to quickly go here and change this text. I can come here and say inspect, and I look for that text and change. So let's say I now say welcome to this bootcamp. If you can see, the text has changed on the website. So now you know, okay, this is a paragraph tag we talked about, and then so this paragraph tag has been given a class, now has been given a style rather. So this style is what is making it a little bit bigger. You can set your style. We'll go into CSS after now, and we'll look at how to play with styles. So from here, you can, for the fun of it, you can modify almost anything you want to modify on this site. But can you go about doing that on people's website? No, because whatever you modify here, the changes here is only applicable to your local version of this site on your device. So what that means is, if I refresh this website, what I've written here cannot stay. So it's only what was there. So that makes it impossible for you to modify someone's website. You can only modify what you see on your screen. And you can use it to, if you're a learner, if you're a beginner, you can use it to give yourself that feelings that you're doing something, you're coming up, when you know what to change and how to change. For example, if I want to change this text, I just right click here and click here, and then locate the text, and then start mutilating the text. So I can now make modifications here, but that modifications can only stay temporarily. If I refresh this page, they are gone. Okay, so, and then you can look at what elements are they using to create a particular aspect of the website, like that. Okay, so let's proceed. Let's look at our guideline. The next thing we are going to look at is link. How we can link from one page to another. But then there are two types of link. Meanwhile, link in website design is called anchor. So when you hear me say anchor tag, what I mean is link. Okay, so we have different types of link. We can link within our page, and we can link outside our page. So if we have our page, let's say we'll break this down a bit. Okay, so let's start with the main link. So to get a link, you have to put the anchor tag. Anchor tag is represented by A. So you can open A and close, and then whatever is inside, the text that is inside will be linked. Here is all. Let's do click here. So this is a link. This is the open anchor tag. This is the closing anchor tag. Now, remember, the entire thing like this becomes an element. Okay, so but we don't just want to put it like this and leave it, because it has to have direction. So how do we give it direction? That's where what we call attributes comes in. Attributes are things that control, that modifies a tag. So like this tag now, this anchor tag now, we have to add attributes. So what are some of the attributes that we can add? Some of the attributes we can add is href. So now, href means the reference point where we are referencing these to. For example, we can reference this to go to https://ictmasterclass.com. And then some other attributes that we can add to anchor tags could be the title, a link to our website. Now, what is this title representing? When you take your mouse pointer over this text, it should give an indication, like a write-up describing what this link does. So that's how you add the title. Okay, so it means if we click this point now, it will take us all the way to our website. So that's how we can get a link.